Stop. Right now, you're probably practicing English the exact same way that keeps people stuck at the same level for years. I talked to over 50 native English speakers, and what they told me about how learners practice completely shocked. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your current practice method is actually making you worse, and I'm going to show you what actually works. So here's the thing. You've been told to read books, watch movies, do grammar exercises, maybe use some apps, and you do all of that. You spend hours every single day, but when it's time to actually speak with someone in English, your brain just freezes. The words don't come out. You forget everything you practiced, and you start wondering if you're just not good at languages. But here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't you. The problem is that almost everyone is teaching you to practice in a way that doesn't match how your brain actually learns to speak. And native speakers? They can see this immediately when they talk to learners. They notice specific things that show exactly what went wrong with your practice. And today I'm going to break down everything they told me. Let me tell you about something that happened last month. I met this guy named Carlos. He's been learning English for 8 years. 8 years. He can read entire novels in English. He understands almost every word when he watches shows on Netflix. His grammar test scores are perfect. But when we sat down at a coffee shop and started talking, he could barely put together 3 sentences without stopping, thinking, and restarting. And this is the crazy part. Carlos told me he practices English for 2 hours every day. 2 hours? So what's going on? How can someone practice that much and still struggle to have a basic conversation? This is what I call the practice paradox. You're doing the work, but the work isn't doing anything for you. And after talking to native speakers who work with English learners, I finally understand why this happens. See, most people practice English the way they were taught in school. You memorize vocabulary lists. You do fill-in-the-blank exercises. You repeat sentences from a textbook. And all of that feels like real practice because you're working hard and spending time on it. But here's the brutal truth that native speakers see immediately when they talk to you. That type of practice teaches your brain to recognize English, not to produce English. There's a massive difference between those two things. Recognition is passive. Production is active. And if you want to actually speak English fluently, you need to train your brain to produce language, not just recognize it. Think about it like this. Imagine someone who wants to learn how to play basketball. So they watch hundreds of hours of NBA games. They study the rules. They memorize all the player statistics. They can tell you everything about basketball strategy. But they never actually pick up a basketball and shoot. They never dribble. They never play an actual game. Would you expect that person to be good at basketball? Of course not. Watching basketball doesn't make you good at playing basketball. But somehow, we think that reading English and listening to English will automatically make us good at speaking English. It doesn't work that way. Now let me share what native speakers actually notice when they talk to English learners. I interviewed teachers, conversation partners, and regular native speakers who interact with learners all the time. And they all pointed out the same patterns. The first thing they notice is what I call translation delay. This is when you hear a question in English, but before you can answer, your brain has to translate that question into your native language. Think of an answer in your native language and then translate that answer back into English. This whole process takes several seconds and native speakers can see it happening in real time. You get this look on your face. Your eyes move up and to the side, there's a pause, and then finally words start coming out. But by that point, the conversation has already lost its natural rhythm. Real conversations move fast. If you're translating every single sentence, you can't keep up. And here's why this happens. When you practice by reading or doing grammar exercises, you're always translating. You see an English sentence and you automatically convert it to your language to understand it. This becomes a habit. Your brain builds a translation pathway, and it uses that pathway every single time. But fluent speakers don't translate. When I hear the word dog, I don't think of the word for dog in another language first. I just see the image of a dog in my mind. The word and the meaning are directly connected. There's no middle step. And that's the level you need to reach. So how do you stop translating? This is where most advice gets it wrong. People will tell you to just think in English. But how do you think in English when you don't know enough English yet? It's like telling someone to run before they can walk. The actual solution is something called comprehensible input. This term comes from a linguist named Stephen Krashen, and it basically means you need to expose yourself to English that you can mostly understand. But that also has some new elements. Not too easy, not too hard. Right in that middle zone. But here's the key part that everyone misses. It can't just be input. It also has to be input that forces you to focus on meaning, not on grammar. This is why watching movies with subtitles in your language doesn't work. You're reading your language. You're not actually processing the English. You're still translating. Instead, you need to watch or listen to things where you have to understand the English to know what's happening. English subtitles can work, but only if you're actually reading them in English and not just listening to your language in your head. Better yet, no subtitles at all, but with content that's simple enough that you can follow along. The second big thing native speakers notice is what I call perfect sentence syndrome. This is when learners try to speak in complete, grammatically perfect sentences every single time. And it sounds really unnatural. Here's what actually happens in real English conversations. Native speakers use fragments. We use filler words. We start sentences and don't finish them. We interrupt ourselves. We say and like all the time. This isn't bad English. This is real English, but learners who practice with textbooks learn to speak like textbooks. Every sentence is complete. Every sentence follows perfect grammar rules. And it creates this weird, robotic way of speaking that immediately tells native speakers that you're translating from memorized patterns. One native speaker I talked to put it perfectly. She said when learners speak too perfectly, it actually makes the conversation harder because native speakers have to slow down their own speech, use simpler vocabulary, and basically adjust to match your textbook style. The conversation becomes work instead of natural. So what should you do instead? You need to practice speaking the way native speakers actually speak. And that means accepting that your sentences won't be perfect. It means using filler words. It means sometimes starting a sentence, realizing it's going in the wrong direction, and just starting over. This is normal. This is how real conversations work. But most learners are terrified of making mistakes, so they only speak when they're sure they can say something perfectly. And this fear kills fluency, because fluency isn't about perfection. Fluency is about communication. It's about getting your ideas across, even if your grammar isn't perfect. I once watched a conversation between a native speaker and an advanced English learner. The learner's grammar was great, but every time he spoke, there was a pause while he constructed the perfect sentence in his head. Meanwhile, the native speaker was just talking naturally, making little mistakes, using fragments, and the conversation flowed. Who do you think sounded more fluent? The person with perfect grammar who spoke slowly and carefully, or the person who spoke naturally with minor imperfections? The second one, every time. Because fluency is about flow, not accuracy. Now here's the third thing, and this one is huge. Native speakers notice that most learners practice with their eyes, not their ears. What do I mean by that? Most practice involves reading and writing. You look at flashcards. You do written exercises. You read articles. Even when you're learning new vocabulary, you're usually reading it. But speaking and listening are audio skills. They happen through your ears and your mouth, not your eyes. And if you spend most of your practice time reading, you're training the wrong parts of your brain. This creates a weird situation where you can read a word perfectly, but you can't recognize it when someone says it out loud. Or you know exactly how a word is spelled, but you have no idea how to pronounce it. This happens because written English and spoken English are actually processed in different areas of your brain. Think about children learning their first language. They spend years listening and speaking before they ever learn to read and write. They become fluent in their native language without seeing a single written word. That's how powerful audio-based learning is, but adult learners do the opposite. We rely on reading and writing because it feels safer. We can take our time. We can look things up. There's no pressure. But this comfort zone is exactly what holds us back. One native speaker told me about a student who could write beautiful essays. His written English was advanced, but when they had spoken conversations, he struggled with basic phrases. His brain had learned English as a written language, not as a spoken language, and rewiring that took months of dedicated speaking and listening practice. So if you want to actually speak English, you need to practice with audio. Listen to podcasts, watch videos, have conversations, use language exchange apps where you talk to people. And here's a specific technique that works incredibly well. Shadow speaking. This is where you play an audio clip of a native speaker and you try to speak at the same time as them, matching their speed, their pronunciation, their rhythm. This forces your brain to process English at natural speed. You can't translate. You can't overthink. You just have to speak. And this trains exactly the skill you need for real conversations. Now let's talk about the fourth major issue, context-free learning. This is when you learn words and phrases in isolation without any real context for when and how to use them. For example, you might learn that big and large both mean the same thing. They're synonyms, so in your mind you can use them interchangeably. But native speakers don't use them interchangeably. We say big problem, not large problem. We say large pizza, but we can also say big pizza. There are subtle differences in how these words are used, and you can only learn those differences through context. This is why memorizing vocabulary lists doesn't work very well. You learn the definitions, but you don't learn the feel of the words. You don't learn which situations call for which words. You don't learn the collocations, which are the natural word combinations that native speakers use automatically. Native speakers can immediately tell when someone learned a word from a list instead of from real use, because the word choice feels slightly off. It's technically correct, but it's not how we would actually say it. The solution? Learn words in phrases and sentences, not in isolation. When you encounter a new word, don't just write down the definition. Write down the entire sentence where you found it. Better yet, find multiple examples of that word being used in different contexts. This teaches your brain not just what the word means, but how it's actually used. Here's a specific example. The word get has dozens of different meanings in English. If you just memorize get means to obtain or receive, you'll be completely lost when someone says, I don't get it, or get out of here, or we get along well. Each of these uses the word get in a completely different way. And the only way to understand all these uses is to see them in context over and over again until your brain starts to recognize the patterns. The fifth thing native speakers notice, and this one surprised me, is that learners practice English the same way every single day. Same materials, same methods, same difficulty level. And your brain gets really efficient at that specific type of practice, but it doesn't transfer to real-world situations. It's like if you practice shooting free throws in basketball for hours every day. You get really good at free throws, But that doesn't automatically make you good at shooting three-pointers or layups or any other type of shot. You've trained one specific skill in one specific context. This is why someone can be great at English grammar tests but struggle in real conversations. They've trained their brain for tests, not for communication. The context is completely different. Native speakers see this when learners can handle planned, structured conversations but fall apart the moment something unexpected happens. Someone changes the topic suddenly. Someone uses slang or a regional expression. Someone speaks faster than usual, and the learner can't adapt because they've only practiced in controlled, predictable situations. The fix is to vary your practice. One day, listen to a podcast. Another day, watch a movie. Another day, have a conversation with a language partner. Another day, try to write something. Mix it up constantly. This trains your brain to handle English in all its forms, not just one specific type, and push yourself into uncomfortable territory regularly. If you always watch videos about topics you know well, try watching something completely new. If you always talk to the same language partner, find someone new with a different accent. Discomfort means learning. Comfort means you've stopped growing. Now here's the moment where everything comes together. After talking to all these native speakers and analyzing what they told me, I realized there's one core principle that explains all of these problems. Most people practice English as if it's a collection of facts to memorize. Vocabulary words, grammar rules, sentence structures, and you treat learning English the same way you might study for a history test. Memorize the information, recall it on the test, done. But language isn't information. Language is a skill. It's more like riding a bike or playing an instrument than like memorizing historical dates. And you can't learn a skill by just memorizing facts about it. You have to do it over and over again, in real situations, making mistakes, getting feedback, adjusting, trying again. This is why people who move to an English-speaking country and are forced to use English every day become fluent so much faster than people who study English in classrooms for years. It's not that they're smarter or more talented, it's that they're using English as a skill every single day in real situations where they have to communicate to survive. But here's the good news. You don't have to move to another country to practice English as a skill. You just have to change how you approach your practice time. Instead of asking, "What should I study today?" ask, "How can I use English today?" Instead of spending an hour doing grammar exercises, spend that hour having a conversation, even if it's just with yourself. Record yourself speaking about random topics for 10 minutes every day. It will feel weird at first, but this is real practice. This is training the skill. Find ways to think in English throughout your day. When you're doing normal activities, try to describe what you're doing in English in your head, not translating from your language, just describing. When you're cooking dinner, think, "Now I'm cutting the onions. Now I'm heating the pan. Now I'm adding oil." This trains your brain to produce English automatically, without translation. Watch content in English that you genuinely enjoy, not just educational content. If you love cooking, watch cooking shows in English. If you love sports, watch sports in English. If you love video games, watch gaming streams in English. The more you enjoy what you're watching, the more your brain will engage with it, and the more you'll learn naturally. And most importantly, speak. Even when it's scary, even when you make mistakes, even when you sound stupid. Because every time you speak, you're training your brain to produce English. And that's the only way to get better at producing English. So let's wrap this up. If you're practicing English the traditional way with textbooks and grammar exercises and vocabulary lists, you're training your brain to recognize English, not to speak English. And that's why you can understand so much but struggle to actually communicate, native speakers see this immediately. They see the translation delay. They see the overly perfect sentences that sound unnatural. They see that you've learned English through your eyes instead of your ears. They see that you know words, but not how to use them in context. And they see that you've only practiced in controlled situations. The solution isn't to study more. It's to practice differently. Treat English as a skill, not as a subject. Use it, don't just study it. Practice speaking, even when you make mistakes. Listen to real English, not just textbook English. Learn words in context, not in isolation. And vary your practice so your brain can handle English in all its messy, unpredictable, real-world forms. This isn't easy. It's uncomfortable. It requires you to make mistakes in front of other people. It requires you to accept that you'll sound stupid sometimes. But this is the only way to actually become fluent. And remember, every native speaker went through this same process with their first language. We all made countless mistakes as children. We all said things wrong. We all struggled to express our thoughts. And eventually, through constant practice and use, it became natural. You can do the same thing with English. You just have to practice the right way. If this changed how you think about practice, hit subscribe because I break down more of these hidden patterns that actually matter for fluency.